present these discussions to, shall we say, the outer world.
Well, it's a good point, and also at the same time, I also feel that it's important to let people have the freedom. And I'm not saying that you're saying this, of course, but again, just put this in there that people should have the freedom to go deep and go into the fringe areas to kind of get new information, if you will, and new perspectives. Meaning that although I absolutely agree with you, you have to be careful how you present that and how you reveal or talk about that information. But for instance, if we go beyond geopolitics, for instance, do you entertain at all let's talk about the alien agenda, for instance. Is that something that you ponder upon, have thought about, or entertained?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, listen, when you're involved in the world of crop circles, you very quickly come up against this notion that there has been contact with extraterrestrials going on at high levels with governments of the world for many years. Now, that's not immediately to say that extraterrestrials are necessarily making crop circles, although many people believe they are.
Sure.
But this is something which, again, you can say some things as a definite, and one of them is that there has clearly been a cover-up concerning UFOs. I mean, there is no question about this. And I mean, I myself, over the years, have spoken to commercial airline pilots who have seen UFOs, flying saucers in the traditional sense of the word, and they almost are quite casual about the way they talk about it, but they also acknowledge that it gets to the point where they don't bother to report it because it's not worth the trouble that they have to go through to do so. And it's very, very clear that government authorities have covered up information on UFOs and potential extraterrestrial contact, which then again leads to this speculation, well, why don't they want us to know? What is it that's going on? And that's when you then have to step outside of the authorities and speak to people who have claimed to have had personal experience with extraterrestrials, with UFOs. And I think one of the interesting things that comes out of that for me, which again I'm writing about in the Truth Agenda, is the amount of UFO contactees, if you like, who claim to have been given visions of the future. And this is a recurring thing that comes out with people who've had these encounters with either extraterrestrial beings or just consciousness, whether it's an out-of-body type experience or a physical abduction. Many of them have been given visions and prophecies and predictions that these times that we're now going into now, the next few years, would be crucial times for humanity. Now, it stands to reason that if governments do have contact with extraterrestrial levels, they also will be party to this information. And that is why I personally am increasingly of the view that they are certainly aware that there is the possibility for huge change. And that's why they are accelerating their programs for one world government, for New World Order, for control now, because they want to make absolutely sure that if any of these prophecies and predictions come true, that they are not going to lose out, that they are going to maintain their hold on the people that are in the world. And I think this then begins to make sense of some of what we have seen in the world. Now, maybe we're putting two and two together and making five, but maybe we're not. And certainly all of this, including the extraterrestrial agenda, which many people believe in, it must be discussed. It must be brought out into the open. And,
yes.
All power to people, like Stephen Greer, who has, of course, initiated the Disclosure Project. All power to military personnel who are whistleblowing and coming forward and saying that they, know about extraterrestrials, because these things now need to be discussed very openly. Although, of course, even there you need to be careful, because we can't say for sure that everything that's being said is the truth. And I know one problem we have at the moment is, of course, that Ed Mitchell, the Apollo 16 astronaut, now he has just recently gone very public with claims that NASA and the US government are keeping secrets about extraterrestrials. Now, obviously, that seems like a very important move, but the irony, and this is fairly typical of the conspiracy world, is that a certain group of other people think that that in itself is misinformation.
Yes, exactly.
And certainly those that believe that we never actually went to the moon, or at least not in the way we were told, and that the photographs have been faked, believe that Ed Mitchell's ET claims are in themselves a distraction. And this, of course, is where you get into this wonderful world of a spiral into total unknowing, because you just do not know who is telling the truth. And I think that this is the problem we've got at the moment, is knowing the absolute truth of all of these things that are being discussed is extremely hard. And that's why I think we're not yet at the stage where we're going to get that kind of clarity. And so therefore everything needs to be put onto the table, no matter how extreme the belief, and be up for discussion, so that maybe we will sooner or later get a little bit closer to discerning what is, of value and what is not. But I still think we're at the stage where we just need to be able to be open, not fear the ridicule, just say, hey, this is what I'm interested in, this is what I believe, I appreciate it sounds a little bit odd to you, but come on, let's talk.
Yeah.
And, the interesting thing is, I find when you do that, people will have that discussion.
Yes.
And this is what I find at lectures. And, I give many lectures to all sorts of groups, not just conferences where there are people who are already interested in this, but also to groups like the Women's Institute, Rotary clubs, Probus clubs, real-world people, if you want to call them that. And they are very open to these debates if you can present evidence to them in a very balanced and rational way. And I'm always much encouraged by the reaction that people do want to hear this stuff if they feel you're not hitting them around the head with it, telling them what they must believe.
Yes.
But if you offer it to them and say, well, hey, this is what I'm interested in, if you're also interested, let's chat. I find then you can open debates up, and I think this is what everybody who has these interests needs to do, and try to be as non-dogmatic about it as possible. And that way I think we will probably get somewhere in the end.
Absolutely, and I think that also helps to open people up if you're not dogmatic about the truth or what you believe in that sense, meaning that, okay, obviously we're all trying to find the truth, right? But if you close yourself down at an early stage, you're not going to be able to explore all the different perspectives, and hence I feel that then you're not actually going to come any closer to the truth. It is very much of an information warfare at these particular times as well, and I think that also the powers that be are absolutely taking this as an advantage in the information warfare, if you will, that just release all of this, junk information, and we will be in one sense then confused about, okay, where do we even begin here? What's true? What's not? But if you disseminate this information, you will know from the top speaking that we will have a better idea of what actually is going on, and it will be more easy to control people. So that's also something to have in mind. But again, if you're not that protective, I guess, in that sense of that this is the right way to think and this is the only truth that I have, then I think it will be more easy to come to your own conclusion. And at the end of the day, I think that that's what is most important, not the kind of the objective truth. I think the objective truth is something that the New World Order is trying to impose on us. They're trying to say to us, this is what reality is, and we decide what that is at this point. Diversity in opinion and perspectives is, I think, the most important thing at this time, Andy.
I would agree very much with that, and I think this is the problem that we've had, is that we've sort of got into this this world of absolutes. We've had the media showing us a version of reality and saying this is how it is. You have governments saying that. But you also have other debates. Of course, recently we've had the whole celebration of Charles Darwin, and that's brought up some interesting debates, because you then get into this evolution versus the Bible story. And I think that's been interesting because we have figures who have become elevated to great places of sort of intellectual honor in our society. People like Richard Dawkins, the biologist. Now, Dawkins, I think, makes some very good points when he points out problems with people's dogmatic beliefs for which they have no proof. But what he can't see, and what I find amazing, is that, of course, Dawkins himself is equally dogmatic.
Yes.
He is as extreme as the people that he criticizes, but in a different way.
Yep.
So, he is, if you like, supporting extreme scientism, pointing the finger at people with extreme religious views, say, and yet really what he's accusing them of, he is equally guilty of. And this is where I think we've got this kind of rather annoying sort of sense of polarities, Whereas if people just were willing to say, okay, well, look, here are two viewpoints. Isn't it interesting that they're so different? Let's talk about those differences in a constructive and easy way and see what remains in the middle. Then I think we could get somewhere. But this is where I think, opinions not based in absolute truths that are absolutely provable, and let's face it, Dawkins cannot absolutely prove that God does not exist, but equally religious people cannot absolutely prove that evolution is not real.
Right.
This is the problem. But what we can do is look at what's in the middle that I think is identifiable and start there. And not that I want to keep coming back to it, but I do think this is where political situations like the weapons of mass destruction or like 9/11 are very useful, because there are things that so many people witnessed or so many people talked about at the time that are very much in the public domain, which even if you just take that information, when you actually try to make sense of it, you realize that there are serious anomalies that arise from the information that is already available. And therefore, I think you can begin to come to a series of judgments about certain bits of evidence. And now this is where I think it gets interesting. So you can put aside the polarities. You can say, well, it doesn't matter who perpetrated 9/11. Let's just look at the physics of 9/11. Let's look at how the towers collapsed. Let's look at the bizarre events of the day that don't make any sense in the usual way that security would have managed itself. And then you can list anomalies, and this is what people like David Ray Griffin, who I have great respect for, are doing. They're simply listing the anomalies. They're not drawing their own conclusions. They're just pointing out, right, this now needs explaining, this needs looking at. And to take another example, to go back to the lunar conspiracy theory, that is an interesting one. Now, we can't say that they didn't land on the moon because we weren't there.
Right.
But what we can say is that the evidence that has been delivered has some question marks, and some of the pictures do look like studio portraits. Well, let's look at that. Let's look at the lighting. Let's look at the anomalies and the shadows and the angles and all of these things that people talk about. And I think it does become clear that at the very least, some of those images could not possibly have been taken without artificial lighting. Now, that doesn't mean we didn't go to the moon, but it does mean there are issues there that need serious reappraisal.
Yes.
And if you can start to look at those bits of evidence that we do have, that we can get some sort of sense of objective reality on, then the subjective realities may start eventually to sort of collapse into the middle with them, and something will emerge where we can be much more discerning about what the overall collective reality of it is. But yeah, at the moment, what we need to do is get all that very clear evidence that we do have laid out as neatly as possible, so that people who are very confused by it all, as a lot of people are at the moment, especially with it all stirred in with the 2012 prophecies and all of this sense of anticipation and impending possible disaster, people don't understand. If they could see the issues, if they could put it together with all of this stuff being discussed, maybe they'll then get a glimpse into a new way of looking at things. And that's certainly what I'm attempting to do, and what lots of other researchers out there are trying to do. But we do need, as you say, to be able to express any viewpoint, however strange it may seem to others, and it can then be appraised and dispensed with if it's nonsense, or looked at again if it has some level of reality to it. But, these are the times to do it. And I think further polarization, just shouting at somebody at the other end of the room saying, well, you're wrong, without the evidence, I think we're beyond those times now.
Yes.
And we've got to find a way to bring people together in the middle, because that's where solutions will be born.
Absolutely. And again, we're just a few years, as I said, a few years into this kind of era of truth, or the unveiling, if you will. I'm hopeful for new productions, be it film or new writings, books, and so forth, because we're kind of slowly laying the puzzle and building the picture of what is going on, and how our world is being, have been shaped, so to speak, in the past. And also, Andy,